Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So today I thought I'd talk about crystals. Working with crystals and rocks, not just crystals, because they're a specific kind of thing, and how to incorporate them in your practice if you're interested in doing that. There are lots and lots of things to learn, of course, and like everything else, this is sort of like an overview of the subject. So first, I'd like to get out of the way reference materials. Because if you're going to work with crystals and stones, you need to be able to do some research and figure out what they are generally good for. And there's a lot of different kinds of reference materials. I have some of them down at my feet, so I'm going to bend over and pick a few books up and let you know what they are. So this one here is Love is in the Earth by Melody. And this book has got a lot of information in it. As with all reference materials, you use what makes sense to you and don't what doesn't make sense to you. She goes more into some of the esoteric uses of the crystals and the stones. The downside of this book is there are no pictures in this book of the stones that you're looking at. So if you're a beginner and you don't know what they are, it doesn't help you figure that out. But I use more than one source of material when I do my research. These aren't the only ones that I use, but this is one of the books that I use. Another book here is the Crystal Bible, and that's by Judy Hall. There's a couple of different versions of her book. She puts out new ones all the time. Good thing about this book, it has pictures. So you can figure out sometimes what you have by looking at the pictures and seeing the different types of stones or crystals, forms that they come in, and that kind of stuff. She also goes through and gives you her perspective on things, what they look like, where they come from. This one's apparently been wet, so it has some hard time sometimes moving it. And so you get other information from this book. Some of it's the same as from the other book, some of it's not. And this is another one that I picked up, Healing Crystals and Gemstones. And again, this one has pictures, which is nice. And this particular author, Dr. Flora Peschek-Bomer and Gisela Schreiber. I'm not sure if it's Gisela or Gisela. Never heard her name said, but those are the two authors that are on the book. One of the things I like about this, besides the fact that there's pictures, is they go over the history and legend associated with the stone, which can give you more ideas about why that particular stone has properties that you might be interested in. And so, again, there's lots of other books that are out there. You can find a lot of different sources for that. And it's interesting when you start to compare the different sources because a lot of them have different ideas of what the crystal is good for. So when that happens, I like to look at the legends associated with it, and sometimes the ancient name of the stone or the crystal gives you more information about what it is. One of the things that's happened with a lot of the crystal books that you find is everyone has gone with the rainbow definition of what is good for which chakra. So all red stones are good for your root chakra, all orange stones are good for your sex chakra, all yellow stones are good for your solar plexus, and on like that. And that's not actually necessarily the case because there's a lot of different kinds of ways of looking at them, and sometimes their associations turn out to be incorrect. So, for example, aquamarine is one of the good examples of how that has gotten mixed up in some books. Some aquamarine, I think I have one in here that's more blue. It comes in a lot of different colors, so you end up with a greenish blue or a bluey blue with aquamarine. I know I have one in my basket because I just put it in before I came out here, but I can't find it right now. All right, it'll come up here. Oh, wait a minute. I think here it is. Okay, so here's a more blue aquamarine color right here compared to the more green aquamarine stone. And in a lot of books, they associate aquamarine with air because of the blue color. It makes no sense to me since aquamarine is a word that means water, water, aquamarine. It's a water stone. And in the history and legends about the aquamarine, the stone actually comes from the tail of a mermaid. Again, another water reference, so there's a lot of water references there. And ancient sailors used to take them and put them in their pocket. There's a couple different stones they used, and aquamarine was one of them, to help keep them from drowning so that they could stay in the water for longer periods of time. So, so that's just sort of, an example. So what I have done for myself, I started my own little notebook for stones and rocks and things like that. And I decided to make it loose leaf. I started in different ways, but I decided the ones that I'm currently working with, for example, I could look up and see whether or not they're safe to use as a mineral elixir, which is putting the stone in water, and you have to clean the stone really well first before you put it in water, and it imbues the water that you drink with the energy of the stone. So that's another way that you can work with stones and crystals. So, I put up whether or not it's a mineral elixir at the top. I put in magical properties, what it's supposed to treat for the medical purposes and that kind of stuff. Because a lot of people use these for medical reasons and so forth. And some of its names, that it was called, and its history, or whatever. So then I can go through all of my books, and I can excerpt the things that help me remember what the properties are of that particular stone so that I can work with it. And this is actually the first step, really, when it comes to working with crystals and stones. If you're going to, you can use any rock you pick up and you can charge it, give it a job for whatever purpose you need it for, and that can work. But if you know what its tendency is already, if you understand its properties and the energetic vibrations and so forth that it puts out, then you're more likely to be effective, and you don't have to use as much focus, concentration, and energy to program the stone to do what you want it to do if it has, if you're using its natural properties to start with. So like the difference between having a bird, for example, do things in the air versus a lizard. You might be able to get a lizard to do air stuff, but it'd be easier to get a lizard to do like fire stuff maybe, because it likes the heat and it needs to absorb the warmth. So knowing and understanding the properties of the stones and the crystals gives you a leg up with that. And that's usually how you start off with this. So some people were asking questions about how to, charge up a bracelet for protection or for whatever it is that you need when you're going outside. And that's the first step, is knowing what the stone is good for, identifying the stone, and then focusing on its natural properties. So for example, this is a tiger eye that I wear from time to time. And tiger eye has the ability to reflect things away from it. In ancient times, tiger eye was used to protect you from the evil eye. That's one of its uses. Protect you from negative energy coming from other people and that kind of thing. And so it has a natural protective quality about it. Same with labradorite. It's another stone that's like that, that has a natural sheen to it that reflects things away from it. And so either one of those stones can make a good thing to wear. Spectrolite is a type of labradorite, and what you do is you focus on its qualities. Like in this case, the quality is to like protect me from other people's negative energy. And then you use your imagination to give the stone its purpose. So if I focus on the stone and I tell it it's going to energize my aura, my energy field that's around me, and use its reflective qualities to send away any negative thoughts or energy forms that are coming in my direction. That's what you're doing when you charge a crystal or a stone. It's more like programming it for a specific purpose. And depending on how you do that, you do or do not need to cleanse and recharge your stones. I mean, there's a whole thing happening now where everybody puts their stones out in the sunlight to charge them up or cleanse them, and put them out in the moonlight every month to charge them up or cleanse them. And I tend not to really do that. There's other ways of doing that take a lot less effort. For example, let me get this guy out. Where did he go? Did I forget my selenite? Okay, I forgot my giant chunk of selenite. Yeah, there's that one up above us, but I have a long wand of selenite. It's about like yay big, and it's nice and flat. And one of selenite's properties is to bring in light energy. There's selenite on this. I actually got some selenite beads. These here are selenite beads to help bring the light energy into my mind when I'm trying to focus and concentrate. This is a piece of kyanite that I have on there. There's blue kyanite and green kyanite. And I'm trying to remember, I put some lapis in there, and I think some like black tourmaline beads, or in order to catch any negative energy to get it out of there. And so I constructed this to sit on my third eye and to help me focus and concentrate. And that's something else that you can do with stones and crystals, is you can use them to enhance your abilities or to bring you into a certain state of awareness. So I just use some copper wire to do that. So I use this large piece of selenite that I have to charge up my other crystals. Selenite has a unique ability to enhance whatever energetic charge is already on the crystal or the stone, or to enhance its natural properties. And so you can just, I have it next to my bed, and I just stick my rocks around it and on top of it, and just let it do its thing. So it doesn't matter, for me at least, what time of the month it is, whether there's a moon out or not, whether the sun is out or not. I think of selenite as sort of a solidified light energy, and we've talked about selenite before in other videos. So I'm sorry I forgot to bring my giant piece. I'll have to show that next time. But, I've been interested in rocks and crystals ever since I was little. I mean, I've always been fascinated with them. I think the amethyst has been my favorite stone ever since I can remember, and I use it still quite a bit. So I have I have this backwards. Interesting. I'll have to turn it around. This is a Phoenix amethyst necklace that I bought myself. One of the first things I actually purchased just for me years back. I got this when I was in Santa Cruz, and it was sort of an interesting thing to decide I wanted to get myself something that was just for me, and as a mother and whatnot. A lot of times as mothers we tend to ignore ourselves and don't do things that are just for us. We're always thinking about the other people in our family that are around us and doing things for them. So it's, there's nothing wrong with focusing on yourself. And then I have this here. This is rubies and emeralds, which is sort of a nice balance between the Venusian and Martian energy. And I just like to wear it for energetic purposes sometimes, just because I like it. So, getting acquainted with them before you start using them, I often sleep with them. I have them under my pillow at night when I'm getting tuned into what their energy is about. And this is a piece of kyanite. It's a raw blue kyanite, so it's sort of like rough and has all these nice planes and stuff on it. And when I saw this, it was at an open air market, and I picked it up, the first thing that I got from it when I held it and closed my eyes was, it was like air, but air, not just the element of air, but air on like another plane of air, like a higher plane of air energy, maybe mental plane kind of thing, which was kind of interesting. And then when I learned about the stone, a lot of people associate this with water as well, or with water instead of air, like the aquamarine they associate with air instead of water. And I have the opposite feeling with them. And this was also something that sailors used, but I think in this case they used it to help them keep air around them so that they wouldn't drown if they fell into the ocean. So between the aquamarine making them buoyant in the water like a mermaid, the kyanite making them able to breathe, sort of, was their protection. So I had read, heard different stories about, in the books, when you read them, they talk about the matrix of the crystal, the consciousness of the crystal, and I had never actually made contact with a crystal entity, or so I don't know what to call them. It's an energetic form on another plane until this piece of kyanite. This was actually the one that introduced me to all of that. And I'd been sleeping with it for a few nights, holding it in my hand when I fell asleep, having it under my pillow. And a lot of times in the evenings, right after I go to bed, I will get like a color light show in my head. Like I see through my eyelids, and then I see all these different things that are going on another level in my room. And when this happened, I started seeing like brilliant colors. It was like these amazing, it was like a light show, the most spectacular colored light show I'd ever seen. And I like things like that. I'm like attracted to things that sparkle and that are colorful and that are pretty. And this thing was just like moving around and doing all sorts of things in my head. And it was very brilliant, which is a new thing for me to have the vivid colors like that. So I was very interested in watching it. So I was like paying attention. It's like, wow, this is really great. And then as the color show started to fade, there was the shape next to my bed. It was like if I'm laying down, it was probably about 3 feet high because it was just above my bed kind of thing at my head level. And it was coalescing into a shape that wasn't changing, like all the colors were moving around and morphing from this to that, but this was staying the same. So I started looking at it because it was like very distinctive, and it had all these like small planes, lines, surfaces going through it. And so I was looking at those, and then I realized it was actually the shape of this crystal, and it was showing me which way was up. I now know which way is up because of seeing that, and realized that this was actually the spirit of this particular crystal. And I've had some others do similar things to me. And then I was thinking about this today, that the better you know yourself and your own energy when you're going through the exercises and your meditational practices and so forth, and getting acquainted with what is you, then the easier it is for you to identify something that is not you. And so it was very clear when I experienced this that this was not me. This was something outside of me, separate from me, and was there. And then I knew what it was. It sort of let me know. So it's not like we had conversation, but I definitely had an experience with it, which kind of opened up new potential in my head for working with the energies of some of these stones and crystals. So just a brief thing, the difference between a crystal and a stone. A crystal is sort of a growing matrix that the crystal actually grows. It can start from a small seed crystal and then become larger and larger and larger. So like selenite is a crystal that forms in long lines. Kyanite is also a crystal. You can see how the different lines and shapes and stuff are there. And but like say, this stone here, this one's going to be hard to see because it's a darker stone, but this is a stone. This is not a crystal. This is a piece of, what do they call it, chromacon? Is that the right word for that? It's a type of green jasper. And the first time I held this crystal helps me to separate my different bodies. It's sort of hard to explain, but when I hold this stone, not crystal, stone, when I hold this stone, it's like I can delineate the difference between my physical body, my astral body, and my mental body. It's just like makes a distinct edge for them. And I don't know if that happens for everyone. That's the thing. These things can be very individual and personal. And depending on where you're at and whether the crystal or stone consciousness is there and wants to work with you and help you out or whatever that is. And I know that stones outside that I meet have a form of consciousness because I can feel it. And when my mind would be racing and I would be having a difficult time, if I went and sat on top of a large boulder and then closed my eyes and let myself sink into the awareness of that giant form, my mind would slow down as I tuned into the stone, because they have thoughts, but they're far apart. They think in much longer terms and slower, if we want to look at it that way. And so they're really helpful for slowing down the brain, or at least for mine. So, oh, there it is. It was right there in front, and I couldn't see it. That is my selenite. See, nice, big, flat. Yeah, selenite's pretty cool because you can actually put a flashlight through one end, and the light will come out the other onto the wall. It's like a natural fiber optic substance. And as you can see, with it being so nice and flat, you can actually lay things on it. You can get them in a lot of different shapes. They're easy to use a piece of sandpaper on them and smooth them out with a little bit of water, because water will dissolve them. And that's the other thing when you're learning about crystals and stones, you need to find out about their environmental likes and dislikes. So if you want to cleanse a selenite, which I don't think you need to do anyway, but if you did, you wouldn't want to put it in a bowl of water because it would eventually dissolve and disappear completely into the water. And there is an old story about, this is the original moonstone, that's why it's called selenite, after Selene, goddess of the moon. And in ancient texts and things, they talk about taking a piece of moonstone, which is what this used to be called, and dissolving it under your tongue for visions. And I've tasted it. It's sort of like a metallic-y kind of taste. I mean, you can definitely tell there's something there. I don't think it's toxic. I haven't seen anything that indicates that it's toxic. I haven't actually gotten a small enough piece to stick under my tongue and see if I could dissolve it. I thought about the idea of dissolving some in water, and it's supposed to help give you visions. Probably would work the best during a full moon because of its energy associated with the moon. And that's the thing, is like all the different crystals and stones have often got not just elemental associations, but planetary ones as well. And so, the difference between a sunstone and a selenite or a moonstone is, they have very different kinds of energy. It's pretty funny that I couldn't find that. But like this aquamarine crown that I made, I use this when I'm working just with water because I have it on my water altar. So I'm attracted to the colors first, but then I never know what I'm going to find. This is a piece of celestite, and I had this under my pillow one night, and then a being came into my space in the middle of the night, and I kind of woke up to it, and I'm like, oh, what are you? And he says, I'm a celestial. So I'm thinking that this actually does connect to the celestial beings that are out there, the sort of higher forms of spirit beings and stuff. And then, sometimes I just see a rock or a stone or a crystal, and I have a specific reaction to it, like here, this piece of Larimar, and seeing it and holding it makes me feel happy. So, you can use stones to help alleviate different moods that you might be in and so forth, as well as to protect you. And it's a matter of practice and working with them. And then, like I said, sort of putting an energy into them as to what you want to do. Is like you create that picture of the job and put it out there onto the stone or the crystal, and then use it that way. And then every time I put this on, that's the image that I have, is it's around my aura and it's sending negative energy away from me and protecting me. And you're going to get lots and lots of people are going to say different things about stones, and then you have to figure out whether they're right for you. This is another piece of tiger eye that I have, and that sits next to my bed as a little sphere. This little bottle cap I used to stick it in, and it just sits there and protects my space. So, let's see if there's anything else in here that's just... And this is what tourmaline looks like in its raw state. It's very similar to the selenite in that it's got the longitudinal fibers parallel to each other, just like the selenite does. And it's good for like chasing away or negative beings or spirits and energy, but actually specifically negative beings that might be like trying to influence you. And they sort of like rejects them or tells them to go away. So everything that I have has got a specific purpose. And like when I'm building a tool, like a wand or something like that, then I think about what these things are. And I like to do a lot of research. Like I have a banishing wand that I made, and I did a lot of research on stones that were good for certain purposes. And I like to find the stones and crystals that most cultures have the same attitude towards. I do that with my herbal stuff too, if I'm doing magical property with plants. Find out the ones that everyone agrees on, I figure are probably accurate. And the one where there's like a huge range of things, and you have to sort of figure this out and make it up on your own. This is a large piece of jet, and jet is similar to black tourmaline in that it like sort of keeps negative energy away. And it's extremely light, because what this is coal that has been compressed over millions of years until it's gotten hard like a rock. And so it doesn't weigh hardly anything at all. It's another stone like obsidian or something like that, the same size, would weigh significantly more. So that's one of the ways you can tell the different types apart. And that's the thing, is like you go to the rock store, you figure out what's there, what's going on, you talk to people, you see what you're attracted to, you hold it in your hand and see if you get a reaction, and if it's a positive or negative reaction, something that you don't feel like you want to hold on to, you might not want to work with that right then. Could be stuff in your energy field that needs to be cleared out first before that stone will be really approachable for you. So this stone here, this is a personal memento that suddenly came back. This just happened 2 days ago, which was pretty remarkable and a sort of a surprise. My husband and I were cavers for a long time, spelunkers, and we went to a place called Crystal Stanislaus Cave in the Sierra Mountains down in California. And there was a lot of debris on the bottom of the cave just laying there. And usually you don't take anything out of a cave, but we decided to take a small chunk that was just lying on the floor, since there was like so much of it, as a memento. And I haven't seen this in years. I have no idea where it's been. And then the other night I was getting ready to go to bed and it had appeared on the shelf next to the kitchen sink where I fill up my water bottle. And it definitely had not been there, because I see that spot every night before going to bed, and then there it was. And I picked it up and I'm like, wow, okay. So for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the fairies that brought it back to me or the energy from telling the story about it to family over the weekend or some other thing I'm not aware of, but I was pretty excited that I got this back. And slept with it under my pillow for a couple of nights. And it's a really warm stone. So it's interesting. It's like I put it on my third eye and it really heated up fast. So it absorbs my body heat or my energy quickly. So then there's other ways you can use stones to like absorb specific energy that you want to be able to use. And this is an example of that. I made my Mars wand, and I used, this is a raw ruby crystal. It's, not the kind of ruby that you would wear as far as it goes. It's sort of like the kind of rock that the more desirable form of it for jewelry comes in, but it's still got the same energy as a ruby. And I used some other ruby type crystals and stuff on the Mars wand, and I created this to absorb the energy from the wand and from the Mars sphere so that I could carry it with me if I needed it, and actually gave this to my daughter when she had to be in court to give her strength and stuff like that. So you can store certain kinds of energies in different stones and crystals. Again, it's a matter of repetition and thought. The pentagram is a Mars symbol. This is a Mars rock. I had it on a Mars wand. I focused on Martian-like energy of protection, warrior energy, the energy to defend the home and hearth and that kind of thing, and let that get absorbed into the stone. And then you can use it for other things. And so it's a matter of practice and exploration and investigation and research and interest. I mean, if you don't, not everyone is into using stones. Some people don't see the point. It's not really their thing. Other people seriously get into it. I like using the bracelets because by charging them up with my intent, telling them what they're supposed to do when they're on my wrist and feeling the energy of what they are, each time I use them, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and becomes more and more automatic. In the beginning, when you work with them, you need to focus and concentrate, and as you get farther in, it gets to the point where it knows what it's supposed to be doing. You've told it often enough, and it just does its job. And so then if I'm not paying attention when I'm in the store and some strange person approaches me and starts to give me the willies, then I become aware of it quicker, and my stones work to protect my energy field so I can see what's going on instead of being affected so much by the thing itself. So that's sort of a overview of stones and crystals and starting the process of working with them. And hopefully it's given you some ideas and some research notions and some explorations. I really recommend sleeping with them just because sometimes in your dreams or in that unconscious state you learn a lot more than your mind has a tendency when it's awake to try and block some of that stuff, especially in the beginning. So just trust the process and start to work with them as you go. So hopefully you've had a good time, And this is Siofra Bradigan, and this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove. So blessed be.